Welcome back. You're watching Morning Express, and this is the way it is. And before we went to that break, we were talking about the cabinets, the 6 cabinets that were named by President Uhuru Kenyatta. But joining us is Professor Kagwanja. Thank you very much for joining. Now, Professor Weri, before we went for the break, you wanted to comment on Fred Matiang'i as Interior CS. Your comments.
Thank you. First and foremost, I think that overall, Fred Matiang'i has carried out his assignments quite rigorously and effectively. There have been ups and downs of all this, but they will always be there. My concern and the general comment I would like to make is this: there must have been lessons that were learned during President Uhuru Kenyatta's first term of office, vis-a-vis the various appointments that he made, how they performed, how they navigated, the public service landscape. Now, it is these lessons that I think should influence the paradigm shift that he wants to implement. And this is one of the things that is likely to influence his appointments. I am disappointed considering we look at the national debt, all right, which is one of our major national worries.
Yes.
Henry Rotich has been in charge. Was he working as a financial advisor to the president, or he was working as an agent of escalation of the national debt?
Okay.
For me, from that particular issue, in my opinion, he may be given a second chance, thinking that he may have learned lessons that will enable him to control the debt. But to me, I could not consider that he stood out to say, look, this is not the direction to take our national debt, all right? From that perspective, I don't give him an A for performance.
Okay.
Because he simply appeared to be like an agent of debt escalation.
Which is at around 4.5 trillion as we speak.
And that is frightening.
Yes.
2, if you look at Macharia in transport, he came high profile, high exposure, but what is the net effect of his being there?
Okay.
The transport is in total, transport docket is in total shambles. Look at the roads, all right? We don't know what's going on with the railway.
Okay.
All right? For me, he's being rewarded for mediocrity. All right? Now, in my opinion, these two cannot be compared with Matiang'i.
Okay.
No, Matiang'i is in a different league. Now, there are other people. When I was talking about criteria earlier, it should be quite clear that when the president appoints somebody to a position, he should be a problem solver, not a choir member, a person who has distinct qualities that will enable him. And look, let's take the example of the late Michuki.
Yes.
Now, he distinguished himself by saying, look, there is a big challenge here. The president gave him an assignment. He went there, defined the limits of his responsibilities, and then established an agenda and solved the problems. Now, how come we do not use him as a role model for ministerial performance?
Okay.
I mean, these are the questions that I think should be asked. The other thing I want to say is this. For me, it's important that the president moves away from ethnic balance. He should go to ethnic or regional balance. He should go to a number of factors: expertise balance, knowledge balance, integrity balance. Those are the things that should be considered inputs into appointments. Now, if we get stuck in this ethnic fiasco that we are not there, you ask to be represented, then you end up presenting a classical mediocrity model to be your ethnic
Professor
representative.
Kagwanja, you seem to be sharing the same sentiments as Professor Tumbo, please.
Well, I have a problem with the public debate on some of these issues. First, appointment of cabinet in any part of the world is the discretion of the principal, because they are the ones who swore the oath, they are the ones who gave promises, they are the ones who know how best to execute the same. So a high-handed debate on who should and who should not be appointed is interference. You're simply meddling into a constitutional responsibility of one person. However, the public debate into who can perform and who cannot perform is also natural, so that even in the US or Britain or elsewhere, what we talk about is, does so-and-so have the right qualifications to perform this task? And that's why I agree with Prof here, that I think the debate should tilt to what one is bringing onto the table, not which tribe or which region one comes from. There is a hype around the so-called face of Kenya. Our constitution provides only for 22 cabinet positions. We are now told we are producing tribes like sausages. We now, I think, are at 44? 43. And others are talking about 70. Because if you talk about the Kalenjin, we talk about 11 tribes anyway. The Pokot and the Kipsigis are wild apart if you look at the two tribes. If you look at the Kikuyus and the Merus, they are wild apart in terms of that. So you might talk about 70. Where are we going to get 70 positions for cabinet if you really is serious on implementing so-called face of Kenya? I think we need to accept the dictates of democracy. And the dictates of democracies are, we had a competitive election, a certain person or two persons won that competition, that is President Kenyatta and Deputy President Ruto won the election, give them space to implement what they promised Kenyans to do. And I think that's what I would stop at.
All right. Deputy President William Ruto was missing when President Uhuru Kenyatta was making his speech. It caused so much uproar on social media, and even Kenyans are talking about it, though he has responded to it. But first, I would like to get your thoughts on that, Michael.
When the Deputy President and the President formed the first government, the last 5 years, they did things as twins will do things. They sometimes, in the last appointment of cabinet secretaries and the executive to be, to extend it a certain level, they were there dressed in almost similar dress code. And they walked to the microphone and they lined up all the appointees, and the whole world saw what was happening. What people read from there is the cabinet at that particular point was appointed with an agreement, equal agreement between the president and his deputy. There are some functions in this, in a government, that sometimes will require the presence of the deputy president as well as the president, just to show the unity in forming that specific role. And there is no more important role that a president and a deputy president will want to be together in, especially when they're coming in, they're forming the government. They will definitely want to be together and in agreement that, and I'm not saying they're not in agreement in it. What I'm saying is what we've been treated with before is not what we are seeing now. And Kenyans have a right to question, why is the deputy president not there? There was no formal communication of his absence in the country. If anything, if you read what somebody wrote yesterday on Nation, Trouble in Paradise, it was actually alleged that the communication person of the deputy president alluded to the fact that he was in his Harambee office. And so the question was, why will the president read read the names, and the president, the deputy president is around, and it really doesn't have to be there. The law does not really say that it must be there, but we're just saying the practice before was that this important occasions was also graced by the deputy president, and so his absence would raise more questions than answer. And I think it is very important for Kenyans to know that the president and the deputy president are working together, whether it is in naming the cabinet or not, you know, and many other things. And so I think it is a valid question that is out there. Although the deputy president has come out and said, well, more specifically, Jubilee people should not encourage this discussion, that there seems to be some division in this. And now we know that even the communication persons of the deputy president has actually threatened the very journalists who did that story yesterday. And you know, the journalist, you know, there are questions whether that is proper or not. I really think as a country, what we want to see is a country that is united. United in the names of the cabinet and united in performance. Because if we see or even smell or sense any kind of division in the cabinet portfolio, then we know definitely that the manifesto of this government will not be met, because there will be pull and tug from every corner.
All right, just to note that the deputy president dismissed an ease of a cabinet list, but yesterday it was announced that NASA will be swearing in Raila Odinga and his deputy Kalonzo Musyoka on 30th January. Now, Oliver, let me come to you. They said it's 30th January or never. What are your thoughts on this?
I think, Mazrui, just to take something from where Gwanda left. I think, one, we are engaging, about the deputy president, we are engaging in a discussion more of optics and no substance at all. First of all, why should we, or why would we choose neglected events and look at them through political lenses? When there was a parliamentary group for Jubilee, the deputy president was not in that meeting. We did not see the whole storm. The role of naming cabinet, it is not even in law that the president must come there and name them. He can as well send the names through the State House spokesman or even through the government, Kenya Gazette. It is not a must. So I think we are investing so much energy in a debate powered by powerpreneurs and political entrepreneurs who are out to reap because of other, the more the political succession politics is discussed, the more they reap. Another thing we need to look at, succession and 2022 is not a package in the Jubilee manifesto. It is not anywhere named that we will be having a cabinet based on 2022 politics. The cabinet should be looked at the eyes of competence. And competence alone, not even this issue of gender and ethnic whatever. Back to your question about NASA.
No, gender is very constitutional.
Before you continue, Professor already looks like he wants to.
I think that there are three things that are very important in this. To me, the debate is anchored on negativity. That you must generate conflict for it to be exciting. I mean, I find that energy sapping and a complete diversion from national duty. And in my opinion, it should be treated with the, you know, that it deserves. Two, I want to say this. There are things in a constitution, like of the government, that are required constitutionally, like gender. You know, those ones, the president has a duty. In my view, the president has a duty to form a government. All right? It is up to him to decide who he consults, whom he doesn't consult. But he must obey the law. All right? That's the second one. Three, it is important for us to think that it may be necessary for us to generate much more respect for other people when they're performing their functions. The issue you mentioned, like now, the opposition can keep saying what it is saying, but Uhuru is busy forming government, period. All right? Now, whether they want to carry out a swearing in or not swearing in, Uhuru is busy forming government. All right? Now, in my opinion, their interest should be, when this government gets formed, can we take it on and wrestle with them and show wananchi that we are better than them. But these other diversionary activities and tactics, I'm deeply critical of this.
All right. You talked about the opposition, and I would like us to listen to a bat by Kalonzo Musyoka. But first, we would like to release our KTN Home viewers. Thank you very much for watching Morning Express. All right, we could just go back to listening to that bite by Kalonzo Musyoka on coalition and even talks.
The only way you can sort out the problem in Kenya now is to revisit the constitution. Sisi hatutaki mambo ya nusu mkate, imeongewa hiyo, nusu mkate, ati Kalonzo mimi niende kukaa kwa hiyo. Nusu mkate. But we want justice. We want justice. And this I'm saying, it is time we revisited the bombers draft again. You cannot run away from dialogue. And it must be serious, genuine, structured dialogue.
All right, if we just listen to another bite there on oathing, NASA's oathing.
Tarehe 30 tumesema na haturudi nyuma mara hii tena. Sawa? Anasema ati itakuwa ni treason, ati high treason ambaye ina hukumu ya kunyongwa, ati hao jela maisha. If it is called for a sacrifice, the ultimate sacrifice that must be paid, so that Kenyans can be free, so that Kenyans can have free and fair elections, then we're ready to pay it.
But of course we can see the mood in the nation. And this is where we are telling Jubilee, if you live in this country, please look at the mood in the country.
Professor Kagwanja, I'll come to you. Will the swearing in have any impact on the nation?
First and foremost, the very debate about swearing in of anything is criminal.
Yes.
Now, and let's not call a spade a big spoon, or that kind of a thing. Our constitution is patently clear. A president will be sworn between 10 and 2, or they're appointed 7 days after, being named by the chair of the commission, and so on. So we must have a clarity of mind. Are we really talking about swearing in of a president, of a chairman, of a cattle dip? I think the NASA need to clarify what they are being sworn in to do.
Okay.
Because as far as the president of the country, as laid down by the Constitution, is concerned, as far as the swearing in of the deputy president, as laid down by the Constitution, is concerned, that is done. That's a done deal. What is not a done deal are the chairmen, the presidents of all other things that are provided by our Constitution, including myself as the president of Africa Policy Institute. I've not been sworn in yet. I might also want to be the chairman of the cattle dip in Rwadia.
Okay.
You cannot prevent me to do that. And I can be sworn on the 30th, on the 15th, or on December next year. It is my choice to be sworn any time as the chairman of my cattle dip. Okay. Let's not make nonsense of this country.
Oliver, you look like you want to respond to that.
I think first and foremost, this country, we need to be serious with whatever we do as a nation. We cannot have fought for a constitution, and then again we pontificate issues which are unconstitutional, they cannot even fit in the place of common sense.
Yeah.
The mere debate of Raila being sworn in itself, I look at it as a therapy to his supporters, because there is nothing much to be gained. I think the best thing the opposition can do to this country is to unite, to have it, to get its acts together and act as a serious opposition, and to show us that they are the alternative government. They should not lose that. They should now be preparing on how to tackle Jubilee. They should be looking at what Uhuru Kenyatta as the president has said as his big 4 agenda for the next 5 years, and how they should be critical on the Jubilee manifesto, asking the government, here you have delivered, here you have not. What we should hear them asking now is, how are we going to pay our national debt? How are we tackling corruption? How are we going to deal with the issues, national issues like road accidents in this country? Those are the things a proper and a sound opposition should do. And my message to Honorable Raila Odinga this morning is, he has fought so much for a name. He should not allow what I'll call polemic sycophants to water down the stature he has built. He has come of age at 73 years old. He should not be allowed to do things or side shows which are hell-bent to succession politics within the opposition. He should be wise as an old man and know that whatever he's doing, those are just to excite a few people. The nation has moved on. That is why even if you look at the debates this morning, swearing in comes around number 4. There are very many other things, cabinet, the Ruto tweet, other things. But the swearing in debate, it has lost the fire. Okay. Nobody's
Michael, do you share the same sentiments that it's just a therapy for his supporters?
I want to say something that is totally contrary to what he's talking about. Whether therapy or not, we know who Honorable Raila is, and we know that President Uhuru and Deputy President, by the virtue that they are now holding the shield of power, are in control of this government. But one thing I have to say is the political theatrics in this country that sometimes I really am quite worried about. That it's in Kenya where people come from an election, and the next day we start politicking until the next election. The question is, when are we going to settle down to do any meaningful development in this country? Remember that when you're politicking every day, you're making people poor every single day. Because when you keep on running around the country and talking about politics and not issues, then we are just going round and round and round and expecting a change in this country. However, I have to admit this, that in a country like Kenya, where the debt ratio is just becoming unattainable, where the corruption is in even the bed of every, everybody in this country, where, the electoral injustices are things that we seem to be changing our constitution, but you still find the same monkey just changing, from one tree to the other in the forest. You change the constitution and still have the same monkeys managing this forest, and therefore you expect a huge change, and it's not happening. Perhaps we need to rethink about our way of engaging these monkeys in the forest that seem to be involved in corruption and cartels in the government. There are looting money away, the cartels in the government that are ensuring that if you don't know somebody, you may not get a job. Cartels in the government that make sure that if it is Ministry of Finance or Treasury, then it has to just be one community filling the entire hall. Cartels in the government that basically, when any employment comes around, they find themselves there vis-a-vis the names that we're talking about, whether communities or not. But what we are talking about here are the demonstrations on the street, are our rallies making a difference? Is the government and the cartels in the government listening to this? Perhaps we need to think about a serious dialogue of engaging, inventing a different way of engaging these cartels that are holding this country at hostage. It doesn't matter how much noise you make out there, Professor. It really doesn't matter. If the same people are still sitting in those offices, you're not going to see a change. And so I think my advice to Raila and many other people that are championing for this swearing in is, for the last 30 or 40 years that people have been demonstrating on the street and being killed in every demonstration. Is it making a difference? Or you're dealing with guys that are deaf that really don't care whether you're killed or running on the street, whether that will change their hearts or not? Perhaps we need to, maybe I'm saying this for the first time, perhaps we need to think of engaging the government in a different way if they can listen, because this demonstration and threat is definitely not ending anywhere. Every 5 years we're talking about change the constitution, do this, and then we want to do this, and then it doesn't happen. And we go to an election, and then people already decided. Now what is threatening this country more than any other thing is that you have an individual that everybody, including the president, is saying, oh, you're going to be the president in 2022. And so every political player is saying, well, if already somebody is destined to be the president in 2022, then what are our ambitions in this country? Perhaps these are some of the things we need to put on the table than saying we have to be sworn in.
All right, you've talked about talks, and I'll come to you, Professor Kagwanja, but first, Professor Tumbo, he's talked about talks. Do you think the calls for talks will sail on?
First of all, I want to assert that the country is emotionally sick.
Okay.
Is emotionally sick in the sense that we are stuck in evil. We are stuck in greed. All right? We are stuck in bullying. We are stuck in laziness. We are stuck in all sorts of things. In my opinion, if they are going to talk, I want them to talk about these things, not about jobs.
Okay.
This nation requires a new beginning, whereby we are talking about, if you see, corruption is in those in government and those outside government. Yeah. So you cannot say there is injustice to keep us out so that we can also practice corruption in government.
Okay.
So emotionally, the prescription required right now, if they are going to talk, in my view, let Uhuru run government and let him prepare an agenda where you undertake an effort for national healing.
Okay.
Healing from the vices. For example, we're talking about cartels. What processes and the political activities have facilitated flourishing of these cartels?
Okay,
It is basically the mindset anchored around an unfair advantage.
Okay, Professor Kagwanja, finally.
Kalonzo from the creep, followed by the creep on the whole thing, look completely incoherent. Very illogical.
Okay.
You're making several propositions which are completely unrelated and don't stick to the agenda. First, electoral justice here means we are not being able to be part of the government, to be involved in the same eating. This is the debate. So electoral justice is a narrow aspect of let us also participate in what we are condemning. If we are condemning corruption, whatever this is, we are excluded. It's a discourse of exclusion. So there is no justice. And by the way, there's nothing called electoral justice because the Constitution is very clear about what needs to be done. Okay. One. Two, what is the connection between the oath-taking and a constitutional debate to change the paradigm? Now, we had this debate in 2009, 2010 about whether do we need parliamentary or do we need presidential. And everybody except Ruto agreed that we want presidential, including Raila. Ruto bowed to the will of the Kenyan masses, and he turned and is now a champion of presidential. That's what democracy is about. Now, how do you want to take us back to bombers before we have implemented the constitution we have passed about 7 years ago? I mean, this country cannot be on perpetual dances to put certain people to power. We have to accept that we have to follow the dictates of the constitution, not the whims of individuals. That's all.
All right, thank you there very much, gentlemen. To my immediate left, Michael Agwanda. Next to him, Oliver Kipchumba, and then Professor Kagwanja. And